To the X part, it changed the demographic of the tennis because of these rising star from the Philippines. Any comments?
Of course I have, because like I said, I've been coming here for 20 years, and at the beginning of the tournament, I think they had to get people in here to watch, because a lot of people here in the Emirates are not necessarily tennis fans. They like cricket or stuff like that, you know. So I've seen it grow, and of course the years that Federer came, that really hit the peak, I thought. But now, this last week at the WTA tournament, we had a different kind of peak, a peak in the first round, and that was due to young Alex Eala from the Philippines. And the stadium was full, and it hasn't been like that.
Look, this photographer just said something about Alex Eala that made everyone stop and listen. This isn't some random fan account or tennis blogger. This is Juergen Hasenkopf, a guy who's been shooting tennis for 5 decades straight. He was ringside when the sport's biggest legends were making history. And what he's seeing around Eala right now, he's calling it completely unprecedented.
Juergen Hasenkopf, tennis photographer. I wasn't always a tennis photographer. I used to do all sorts of stuff, travel and social media and home stories and stuff like that. But more tennis come up, and in the end, I ended up doing tennis only. I always say if I had been more attentive at school, I would have had a better job, but I quite enjoy my job, and I've been doing it now for...
So who exactly is making this claim? Because context matters here. Hasenkopf didn't just stumble into tennis photography yesterday. This guy has been working professionally for half a century. Started out doing travel shoots, lifestyle content, all kinds of commercial work. Then the German tennis explosion hit in the 80s. Steffi Graf and Boris Becker turned their entire country into tennis fanatics overnight. Hasenkopf grabbed his camera and never looked back.
And when I came to Germany, obviously with the tennis boom in Germany, with Becker and Graf and so on, I started doing more and more tennis, and after a while you lose contact with all your other media and people that you used to work before with. And yeah, ended up just traveling the world, following the tennis circuit. And yeah, here I am in Dubai this time. Like this is, I think I've been here over 20 years now. So it's a nice stopover when I come from the Australian Open. I just get off here and stay a couple of weeks to do the WTA and ATP tournament here at the Dubai Duty Free Championships. And yeah, it has changed in the last few years, and especially the players' parties have changed.
Dubai's been his regular stop for over 20 years now. He caught Federer's prime years there and still calls those the absolute peak of anything he'd witnessed at that venue. Got lucky at a player party once and snapped the first unofficial engagement shots of Djokovic and Jelena just by being in the right spot and asking nicely. He watched Ana Ivanovic dominate, saw this tournament evolve from a small desert event trying to build an audience into one of the tour's most prestigious stops. So when someone carrying that much history says he's witnessing something brand new, you pay attention.
A first round, second round match, there was such an atmosphere, and obviously she's a crowd favorite here, and probably going to be a crowd favorite at any tournament she's going to play now. And yeah, I remember her winning the US Open in 2022, and I thought, oh yeah, nice girl, pretty girl, and winning against the favorite at the US Open. So I've more or less been looking at her at some tournaments, but when she came here, she made it to the quarterfinals. It was a fantastic match she played to get there, but unfortunately, she lost against Coco Gauff, and yeah, but that was something really special to have that atmosphere in the early round of WTA.
Here's what stopped him cold. Those first and second round matches Eala played in Dubai this year created an atmosphere he'd literally never experienced before, not once in 20+ years of covering this tournament. Early round WTA matches just don't generate that kind of energy. You get your hardcore fans, some media, maybe families of the players. The electric-packed stadium moments come later when the stakes get higher. But Eala's early matches were different. Stadium packed to capacity, crowd noise you'd expect from a final, energy that made Hasenkopf realize something fundamental had shifted. He remembered watching her take the Junior US Open back in 2020, noted it as impressive but filed it away like dozens of other promising junior wins he documented. Most of those kids never make the jump to professional success. The gap between junior tennis and the tour is massive. But then Dubai happened. She made the quarters and lost to Coco Gauff. But the result wasn't what caught his attention. It was everything else. The investment from the crowd, the sense that this match meant something bigger than just another tournament result. That's what separates memorable sports moments from routine matches that get forgotten in the archives. Actually, Dubai wasn't even where he first noticed this phenomenon. Go back to the Australian Open earlier this year. Hasenkopf was trying to move around the grounds during Eala's matches and kept running into crowd problems. Anyone who's been to a Grand Slam knows the main stadiums get crushed with people, but the outer courts usually stay manageable. Not when Eala was playing. He walked past court 14 and saw something that genuinely surprised him after decades of covering these events. A massive group of Filipino fans had taken over the lawn area outside with flags, food, drinks, the whole setup. They couldn't get tickets into the actual court, so they created their own viewing party around one of the big screens. Made it into a community celebration, the kind of thing you'd see at a pub during World Cup matches, not for a tennis player in early Grand Slam rounds. Hasenkopf started shooting photos of the scene, not because anyone assigned it to him, but because his 50 years of experience told him this was historically unusual and worth documenting. Then, Indian Wells practice sessions rolled around. Practice Court 6 has limited seating, just some standing room around the edges. Totally adequate for training, but never designed for major crowds. Eala scheduled a practice there, and the space completely ran out of room. People started climbing up into the gallery of the adjacent practice court, looking down from elevated positions just to catch a glimpse of her hitting balls. No match happening, no ranking points on the line, no competitive stakes whatsoever, just practice. And the elevated galleries were packed with fans craning their necks to watch. Hasenkopf's takeaway from all this is practical. Tournament directors need to start rethinking court assignments when Eala enters their draws. Current infrastructure wasn't built to handle this level of fan interest around a player ranked 31st in the world. If she keeps climbing, and everything suggests she will, the gap between crowd demand and venue capacity is going to become a real operational headache. His advice is simple. From here on out, put Eala on bigger courts so more people can actually see her play live. That's not a compliment disguised as logistics advice. That's a veteran photographer telling tournament organizers they haven't adjusted to the reality of what this player represents for their attendance numbers. But here's where Hasenkopf's observations get really interesting. He didn't just talk about crowds, he talked about danger. Specifically said he hopes Eala and her team keep their heads on straight. Media attention is exploding. Sponsors are showing up with massive checks. Commercial opportunities around a player with this kind of crossover appeal and fan base are enormous, and they're going to keep arriving faster and heavier as her profile grows. His worry is classic in professional sports, but no less important. Players who get pulled into the commercial machine before building solid competitive foundations sometimes find the attention and expectations outrunning their actual results. Rankings climb, brand deals multiply, media appearances fill up the calendar, and somewhere in all that chaos, the actual work of becoming a better tennis player gets squeezed out. He kept emphasizing sporting success as priority number one, saying everything else falls into place naturally after that. It's advice and warning rolled together. Keep competitive development at the center of every decision, because the alternative path has a rough track record in women's tennis. He didn't name Anna Kournikova directly, but the reference was obvious. There's a version of this story where marketing gets ahead of match results, and the player's career gets defined by cultural impact instead of competitive achievements. Kournikova was legitimately top 10 and won Grand Slam doubles titles, but media coverage reduced her to image, and that narrative stuck. The commercial success was real. The tennis success was also real, but they never aligned in a way that let tennis be the primary story. What Hasenkopf wants for Eala is some smaller tournament appearances. Not because he doubts her ability at the top level, but because consistent winning at any level builds confidence and creates the mental foundation every elite player needs. Grinding out victories on smaller stages, building winning habits, creating a record that shows competitive success across different situations. That's the work that prepares players for when the biggest courts and matches arrive. Remember the context here. Eala is 20 years old and ranked 31st globally. She's already beaten Iga Swiatek at Miami. made quarterfinals at major WTA 1000 events, competed at the Australian Open at a level that generated unprecedented crowd interest for someone in her position, won gold at Southeast Asian Games, marking the Philippines' first women's singles tennis gold in over 20 years at that competition. The foundation is absolutely real. The progress is absolutely real. Hasenkopf isn't questioning the player. He's expressing caution about the environment around the player, which is completely different and arguably more crucial to get right. Talent and work got Eala to 31st in the world. What happens next, whether she keeps rising or gets stalled by the weight of being this visible this quickly, depends heavily on decisions made around her and by her over the next couple years. The Federer comparison Hasenkopf made deserves serious attention. He called the years Federer came to Dubai the previous peak of what he'd witnessed at that tournament. Federer, 20 Grand Slam titles, widely considered the greatest ever by huge portions of tennis history. Hasenkopf is putting what's happening around Eala in the same category as what happened around Federer at this event. He's not saying she is Federer. He's saying the crowd energy, the sense of witnessing something special, the feeling that history is being written in real time, that's the level he's comparing this to. Coming from someone who was there for Federer and has been photographing tennis for 5 decades, that carries serious weight. Indian Wells' main draw is where all this gets tested most directly. She enters ranked 31st, with a first-round bye. The draw could set up a rematch with Coco Gauff, who destroyed her 6-love 6-2 in Dubai. If that match happens, it's going on a much bigger court than Dubai provided, in front of crowds that'll include those Filipino fans who showed up at practice court 6 just to watch training sessions, and somewhere in those stands, almost guaranteed, will be Juergen Hasenkopf with his camera. 50 years of tennis history behind him, watching to see what comes next with the player he says represents something he's never quite witnessed before. The crowds already know their answer. They chant her name at practice, they set up viewing parties on lawns outside courts when tickets sell out. They climb elevated galleries at practice facilities just for sightlines to training sessions. Whether results eventually match this atmosphere is the question Hasenkopf is most curious about. Based on everything he's observed through 50 years of shooting this sport, he's genuinely hoping the answer turns out yes. A 50-year veteran of tennis photography just compared what's building around Alex Eala to the Federer era at Dubai. That's not casual praise. The crowds are already convinced. Now we find out if the titles follow. If this breakdown gave you something new to consider, smash that like button and subscribe so you catch every analysis like this one.